I tell you what, man, I'd rather be lucky than good. I wouldn't too, Britisher. You don't always say that, but I'd rather be lucky than good. And I'm very lucky tonight. So since we have such a short time with this young lady, Miss Jones, I'm going to let her say her own name outside of Miss Jones so I don't mangle it and make myself look like a fool. Why don't I do this? We can just introduce ourselves. And Miss Jones, tell us who you
are. So my name's Weebo Jones. I have a channel by the same name, and I do everything from book reviews to a series called #Everything is Sexist that discusses men's rights and everything in between.
That is perfect. That is perfect. Go ahead, Common Sense, and roll it on down that way.
No worries. I'm the Common Sense guy. I try to talk common sense. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. That's pretty much me. On to the Britisher.
I'm the Britisher, and I come from where the history is from.
That never gets old for me. Well, if you don't know who I am, you probably wouldn't be here. So, again, I don't want to take up too much time and just shooting the breeze, but I guess I'll start it this way, Miss Jones. I've been watching some of your videos, and I don't have a lot of critiques for you at the moment. What I do wonder is, you seem very young. You seem very informed about the things that you're talking about. But it makes me curious, what made you want to like put your ideas on display for everybody to see at such a tender young age? I mean, what was it that gave you the fire to go out and to start to, you know, give your version of how you see the world?
So, my whole experience with just politics and, well, everyone's rights in general, it kind of started when the Texas cop shooting happened a few years back, when there were 5 cops that were basically assassinated. I think it was by a BLM member. And everyone, there was kind of like this whole ruckus, and there was this whole cops are bad ideology. And that's kind of how I got into the anti-PC culture on YouTube. And so I started off watching a lot of people talking about their opinions and what they think about certain aspects of culture and politics and the law and just everything in general. And I decided that I had opinions too. And they were kind of logical, and I had things to say. So my first legit analytical and informational video that wasn't just a hilarious skit, because that's a lot of what my first content was, just hilarious stupid skits that don't really do much in terms of changing the world. But my first one was a psychological analysis of the YouTuber Emit, because he had put out all of that content about judging people's bodies that were younger females, and he was talking about all this controversial stuff and how basically he was in the right, or how there was nothing wrong with that. And I, as a partial psychology major, partial comp sci major, I saw so much wrong with his one reasoning and two everything that he was doing in that I had to I typed something out, and I was like, this is actually really good. I should film myself saying it and just say it. So I did, and people seemed to like it because it was really well thought out. It was really well put forward. And so I just kept making that content because it was more valuable than the stupid skits that I would put out prior to that. Because I don't know if you saw, but I have a video called Boys versus Girls, and I have a video about why they call me Weebo, and no one gives a shit about that. So I kind of retracked myself onto a different portion of YouTube, because what I was doing prior to that didn't really do anything, didn't really reach a lot of people. But what I was doing after that, people seemed to really enjoy that, so I started diving more into that content. And then the next series that I came out with was, I think it was Identity Politics, and it was like a 3-part thing that kind of basically encompassed everything that has to do with identity politics and why it's so screwed up and why we shouldn't attribute ourselves to that sort of ideology just in general.
Okay. So basically, sorry, I've got some back here from somewhere.
Yeah, I just muted myself. That was pretty tough, but it looks like we got it. Worked itself out. Carry on, Brett.
Okay. So basically, you kind of started in one place and then kind of found that you kind of almost by accident sort of stumbled into something else, and then realized that you kind of enjoyed that other part almost more than the original part, if you know what I mean. That's the way I'm kind of understanding this.
Yeah, I did. I realized after that I enjoyed doing that more. I enjoyed thinking about things more than just making 6-minute videos that were about nothing in particular. I like using my brain a lot, and if I could do that with a hobby that I also enjoy, YouTube is basically a hobby that I really enjoy, that I'm not going to like stop just because it's not fun anymore. Like it's the hobby that I enjoy plus the brain power that I want to incorporate into it, and it's just kind of everything that I want to do with my free time, if that makes any sense.
So it's kind of the challenge that you relish.
Yes, because when I am making a video, I do, especially when about a concept or something that has a lot of information to it, or I'm kind of arguing a point, I have to do a lot of research, and I have to comment things from a specific angle, or like a non-specific angle, or an angle that no one's ever thought of before. And I have to do not just a lot of thinking, but a lot of research, and then a lot of abstract reasoning around certain things. Not necessarily like I wouldn't call it mentally gymnastics, but I would call it more, there's a lot more thinking that goes into it than just say your average what would I call it?
Your average Joe, your average video, your average person on the street.
Yeah. Like my earlier content was a lot less thought out than my current content is.
So would you, I mean, just in order to get away from the only name so far having been mentioned being being Onision, who of course is, who stands high in the appreciation of all of us. I was just wondering, are there any other names that basically inspired you to go the way you did? Are there any other YouTubers to whom whose content you saw and whom you sought to emulate?
So I really liked Chris Raygun's take on certain things. I think his sense of humor is hilarious, and the way that he approaches things is very well put. But at the same time, I also enjoy Aiden Paladin's way of approaching a topic. It's not as humorous and not as, kind of off the cuff.
Speaking of Chris Raygun, if you can't find bleach, what shall we use?
Tide.
Tide. I'm so sorry.
Bye, Coke.
If you don't get the inside joke, go watch her videos. It was just a little hilarious thing she did, and gave some props to him. Sorry, young lady. Carry on.
Totally fine. But Aiden kind of dives very deeply into a topic, almost to an obsessive way, and I think that I do that a lot in some of the things that I talk about, because I am pretty obsessive about, one, the facts, but also just the statistics that go into certain things, because with a lot of my videos, there's a lot, I don't know if you've realized this, but there's a lot of math in some areas, and I try to make it a little bit more interesting, because
I've noticed you like your charts.
I do. I one of my most recent videos, I had to take all of the data, and I had to basically just mesh it all together in one giant chart, and that took at least 3 hours to find all that data, compile it, and then do the math, and then put it in the same place. But at the end of it all, reiterating that information in front of the camera was a lot of fun. And I
made your point. It made the point of the video as well, especially I believe that's the one you were doing about the college statistics.
Mm-hmm. That
made your point completely and utterly, to prove the fact that somebody who's on the education board in the US knew less about the education system than what somebody that obviously is intelligent but is not on the bloody board.
Yeah.
All right, who can read the chat and knows what these people are talking about with this? So I just heard about, looks like BitChute today. Is this something that I should know about, or am I being trolled by our beloved and wonderful followers here, Common Sense Guy? Do you know anything about this?
I haven't known anything about it at all. I don't even know what this is.
All right, I'll just look it up while we continue to talk. See if they're just trying to get me. You never know with the people watching right now, Miss Jones. We have some really great folks, but they have
weird sense
not
of
as bad as some that I've seen, but they have some twisted sense of humor.
Oh, it's totally okay. I enjoyed a good twisted sense of humor. I once held a stream like 2 weeks ago where we talked about dead baby jokes, and it was completely messed up for like 2 hours straight.
We're not above that. We had Magog on one day, and it seems that we did one-line jokes, Britisher, for about 40 minutes, did we? Brit was online, finding them online, jokes, one-liners, and short story jokes. And I think Magog and I finally were like, we'll just quit. Because I don't have an end. I know so many, I don't have an end, and I don't think he has an end either. He can just keep going.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah, there you go. So that's what happens here on Police State. We try to keep it light, interspiced with a little bit of seriousness. Because what are you going to do? You're going to live your whole life. And that was why I gave you my first question. I think of a young person like you, intelligent, vivacious is what they used to say, pretty and whatnot. And is it going to be that I hope that all of the deep thinkers, the ones that look at what's going on in society, that they can find time, as you said in your when you were transitioning from high school to college, to have some free time, some private time where this just isn't what's pervading everything in their life, and not that it does for you, but I do see. All one has to do is look at your content, and they can see that you do spend some time thinking about right and wrong. Is that fair enough and simple enough to say?
Yeah, it is. I do spend a lot of time thinking about right and wrong, but I also spend a lot of time thinking about how best to iterate it to the lowest common denominator, because when you are making videos like this that are super analytical, super detailed, and they're tackling a concept that you think is like second nature to you, but it might not be to others, you have to assume that, and this sounds bad, but you have to assume that you're talking to an idiot. If you're trying to convince someone of something and they're coming from the complete opposite end of the spectrum, you have to assume that they know nothing about what you're talking about. So you have to cover all of your bases. And that's actually how I approach all of my essays for classes as well. You just have to kind of approach it from a point of, this person is completely ignorant. Let me walk them baby step at a time, hand holding to where I'm at, so that they can see how I got from point A to the point B.
Yeah, you say it like that, it may be harsh for normal people to hear, so to speak, or people on the left in general. But that's what you've got to do. If you've got to make a political statement or a statement of any sort of meaning, you have to cover your bases, as you quite rightly said. If you don't cover them, your argument gets torn apart. And if it gets torn apart, what's the point in talking about it?
Yeah, I like to say, explain it to me in idiot terms if I don't understand something, so that at that point, people can basically understand that I mean, like, I don't know anything about this. Explain it to me in a way that, a 4-year-old could understand.
One of my best professors I ever had, Mrs. Bird, she was the chair of English. And I was in English, 211 or whatever, 212. It was very early on. And that was one of the assignments, was write a paper. Shouldn't even really be a paragraph. She didn't give us any of these instructions. She just said, write down right now instructions for a 3-year-old to make a peanut butter sandwich. And I was like, I got all bullet points out and numbers. And in the end, I don't really remember that anybody got like a glowing, oh, yeah, that's what you should. Because the first thing she said was, you don't write something for a 3-year-old because they can't read it, number one.
Funny you say that, actually, because as a computer science major, this is like completely opposite of the spectrum of psychology, but as a computer science major, you actually, when you're dealing with computers, you have to assume that the computer is extremely stupid, and you have to basically write down the instructions in a way that it could do without any knowledge of anything at all. And we actually use the peanut butter jelly sandwich analogy a lot in especially data structures when we're talking about, you know, getting a computer to do one simple task is like multiple lines of code. It's crazy.
Well, yeah, I was kind of reminded of what was just said there, you know, Olga, when you said you needed to kind of create instructions for 3-year-olds on peanut butter sandwiches. I was reminded of some story from maybe 10 years ago or more, I don't know, when the BBC moved, but basically when they had done major refurbishment to their main headquarters, they actually distributed a memo which told people how to use the revolving door at the main entrance.
Yeah. Like the revolving.
Well, I mean, if you know, basically, if you, to my mind, if you can't use a revolving door without instructions, then perhaps you ought not work there.
Got a problem, yeah.
At the same time, if you are already in the building to receive the memo on how to use the revolving door, how did you get into the building?
The push door. The other one.
Fire exit, the one that's been propped open for the security guard.
Perhaps they all climbed through the window with, you know, sheets that were knotted together or something like that. I mean, who knows? But yes, it made the national newspapers all over the place. I think it also got on Have I Got News for You? That it was just basically so ridiculous that you felt you needed to instruct your staff on how to use a revolving door.
Oh my goodness.
But it explains quite a bit about the BBC and how it has come to be the institution it is today.
The great leading aspect of intelligence.
Oh,
sorry, no, we're talking about the BBC. Sorry.
Yes, that's before we get to BBC Pigeon, yes.
I'm not going to totally derail this unless everybody wants to go down this rail, but I will share this with y'all. I pulled it up. I'm more and more thinking that eventually they're not going to let Miss Jones just say that. You might think you're all cute and stuff, kid, but forget about it. They don't give a shit about you. I'm just going to be honest with you. Google don't give a shit. The stuff you say, you're Nazi. You're a effing Nazi. And so Yvette Farrakhan would punch you in the gut.
It's funny you say that, actually. I hosted a live stream last night, and I actually put it as it was a future event, and like 2 hours before the live stream actually happened, it was labeled as not advertiser friendly. So it had the little yellow $ next to it. And the live stream hadn't even started yet. So I was just so confused.
So they already knew what you were going to say.
We were talking about guns.
Those algorithms must be better than I thought.
No, Razor Fist hit the nail on the head. It's Blacklist. But this is what it looks like. Anyway, BitChute. It looks like, who was it that told me that? Deplorable Me said BitChute is soon to have live streaming capability. Apparently, it's considered a peer-to-peer. And, you know, with Dago, who remembers Napster and whatnot?
I remember LimeWire. LimeWire was amazing.
LimeWire, old school. LimeWire, you're old. You're older than I am then, probably. No, I'm just teasing. But that's
definitely not older than you, mate. No.
I know.
I don't know what any of these are.
But right, see what I mean? So they're peer-to-peer. In other words, what it was saying, Miss Jones, is that if I own a movie, okay, and I meet you online, example of meeting you online, you come across my website and see that I own that movie, and then you share it with me. You could download it to watch it later or whatever. That was the idea. But there was, you know, Metallica. I don't know if you ever heard of that band. And a lot of it,
yeah.
You know, they started suing Napster and LimeWire, all of these things, Pirate Bay. Remember that one? Anyway, I don't want to get too geek. We'll start talking about 4chan and joking, making inappropriate memes and whatnot. But so peer-to-peer has been up, it's been in question. And the last time it was measured, it was found wanting.
Very much so.
Like I said, I don't want to totally derail this, but I hope right now, I'll show y'all right now. I'm trying this little new experiment with VidMe. There's my VidMe. Look at that. Shameless, shameless, dirty Jewish plug. The Jewish wandering bastard that I am. Sorry. I don't ask for shekels anyway, folks. You got to give me that, right? Yet, of course. That's all. My grandpa said you always say yet.
You'll get your pound of flesh.
I'll try to find out how. But so I'm going to Vidme because I'm nervous. And now I hear that they might have and you know why I'm nervous, Britisher.
We're definitely going highbrow here with Shakespeare allusions.
Sorry.
Well, I'm getting nervous because I want a place to stream, and right now this is where we do it, you know. And I enjoy this medium that we've found. And Vidme, I don't know, they don't do it, and they're saying they may have or are going to have or do have some kind of streaming capabilities on this BitChute. But that's all I know about it. So like I said, no derails. Maybe I'll learn more and we can talk about it another day. Oh, I'm going to get bitched out later by the Common Sense.
Well, I heard.
Common Sense Guy, not Caracal. Get it right. Sorry, carry on, Britisher.
Dave Cullen spoke quite well of BitChute. And with his sort of computing forever background, he seems to be quite well up on these things.
Yeah. I've never liked P2P. I've never liked person-to-person. Very hard chance of getting viruses and getting hacked.
Yes, yeah, sure is.
Anyway, if we're going to derail everything, can you check your Twitter DM, please, Ogre? I've sent you a story that will be quite interesting to you on a personal level. While he's looking for that, do you want to explain why you like talking about fathers' rights and in general at all, Weebo?
Yeah, sure. So basically this stems from my own personal experience with dealing with a system, the court system in the US that is kind of extremely gynocentric. So for those of you who don't know, my parents split up when I was 6, and that was the beginning of a 12-year on and off custody and child support and visitation dispute. So for the first couple of years, my mother gained, not first couple, but the first significant number of years until I was about 17, even though she didn't have sole custody, even though she had at first like 50-50 custody with my father, and then progressively less and less custody with my brother and I. So she persistently, throughout those years until she stopped receiving the money when I was around 17, she got about $1,900 every single month from my father.
That's a lot.
It is, especially since, one, she didn't have full custody of us or even half or partial custody near the end.
You said us, so it wasn't 1,900 for one. How many children? By just curiosity.
It was.
That's still a lot. That's an awful lot.
Yeah, it would be 1,900 children. 1,900 children.
That's a lot of children.
1,900.
Quite a tribe.
Every month until I turned 18, and then once that I hit 18, it would be 1,700, I believe, until my brother hit 18, and then the rest of the money that my father put aside for us when they split up would go to our college fund. Now, the reason that she stopped receiving child support when I was 17, before the 18 years was up, was because she ended up emptying out the account that my father had put aside for the child support. Now, keep in mind that when this happened, or that when my dad set it up, he had put $500,000 in there initially, because he wanted us to be well off and such. And my mother isn't exactly the most financially secure woman in the world. Still isn't, never has been. But he put $500,000 in that account for me and my brother until it became time for us to not do that. But when I was 17, she ended up emptying out that account, putting it into her own account, and she was not supposed to do that. So my father took her back to court over that, and he actually ended up winning all of that money back. And she had to give all that money back, and then she didn't get child support after that from him, which, you know, was kind of a small victory in terms of all of the things that my dad had gone through with the child custody, because they did fight a lot in court over the 12 years that there was this issue. They fought over the visitation. Once my mother stopped coming to visit, I was actually mandated to visit with her about 4 hours every month at one point. And this was I think it was after freshman year of high school, when she had abandoned us for about 8 months, me and my brother. This was after that. It's a very complicated and long story. There's a lot that goes into it. But essentially what you need to know is that my mother, despite not having a financially secure, job, despite having a house that was always in trouble of foreclosing on, despite just all around being kind of the worst kind of caregiver, the one that neglects their children but uses their money from their father from child support to basically kind of feed their every whim. Despite all of that, my dad still had to fight tooth and nail with her in court to get even like 50-50 custody and then more custody as the years panned out.
Why do you think that is? As in the law? Do you think there's a particular law that's been set in the US that states that this has to happen this way, or do you think it's just the idea of the judges and they take it that way?
It's not necessarily the law; it's the opinion of the judges. There's a popular opinion that women are naturally better caregivers. This, can be true, is not always true. I mean, my mother certainly was not a very good caregiver in the slightest. I was basically the primary caregiver of my brother and I when I was at that age, 6 and beyond. So there's that opinion that men are kind of, supposed to support the women, which is also part of the reason why most women get child support from their from the fathers of their children, as opposed to the other way around. And it does stem from this idea that women are the better caregivers, so they should watch over the kids while the men support the family. And this is actually kind of, it stems from social norms that stem from the kind of evolutionary perspective of, I don't want to say biology, but mostly it's kind of psychological. Back in the
sociology?
I don't want to say sociology because the way that I was presented.
You're explaining.
Yeah, sorry. The way that I was presented to me in psychology from the evolutionary perspective was that back in the day when, like way back in the day when we were hunter-gatherer types, while the men would go off and they would just basically hunt and provide for their families and wives, the kids and the mothers would go off and they would collect things, and the mothers would watch over the kids because the fathers, who were the bigger, stronger, more fit versions of humans, they would be the ones that would ideally go off and hunt for the bigger game, whereas the females were more adept and more physically prone to hunting, or not hunt, but gather foods and such. That was the way it was explained to me.
Did they invent weapons?
It's
Where's Amanda Wilkchild? She's supposed to be swinging by too. Brett, she would have jumped. I'm just playing her part because she's not here. She's got kids. So I wanted to play, I was just saying. Do you think it's possible that because they were sitting around at home that they maybe made bows and arrows and stuff and invented those?
That's a good question.
Also, I want to point out to you, young lady, that what we're talking about is anthropology.
Anthropology, thank you.
Yeah, there's no psychology that deals with our ancestors. You're talking about, like,
I think touched on it in my psychology class, though.
They tried to, but you can't
apply the invent weapons thing.
Benjamin Rush invented psychology. Basically, they like to say William Went did, and they may try to indoctrinate you, my young friend, but it was Benjamin Rush. He's on the seal of the APA, the American Psychology Association, and I could go on and on, man. I love this topic. I don't want to get too geeked out. But it is anthropology. And you know what? We don't really know. We can guess what you said. We do know one thing. It seems throughout society that whatever the jobs the males do, so at this point it was going out and hunting, that job had prestige. So at a time when the females were keeping the cattle, doing the gardening and whatnot, and gathering close to the home. Well, started with gathering close to home and branched out into those other things. The glory, so to speak, went to the hunters. You know what I mean? The men would come back and they hunted the cow, whatever they hunted. And then as it shifted to the men being more agrarian and starting to do agriculture, that also shifted. So I say we should give high praise to the idea of a parent. And what happened in your case is the travesty is this. If it was just based on a merit, the idea of merit, and you looked at each individual case, and yes, the assumption should be that the mother should get the children. That is just psychologically better for the children, depending upon their age, especially when they're young. But there's so many instances where I believe that once the child is much younger than they allow now, I would say a caseworker should take the child aside as young as 8 and say, you know what, get them playing with some toys first, give them an orange juice, get a little sugar in them, get them messing around for a good hour, 40 minutes, ask them what they, talk to them, and then ask them honestly, hey, if you could go anywhere right now, but and get their input. Because very often, I'm not trying to sound like, so that probably sounds crazy to a lot of y'all. That can be applied very recklessly.
Oh, yes.
But if it's just taken into factor and taking it, look, I could go on and on. It's horrible what they're doing. When I listen to what you're talking about, I'm not going to sit up here and cry for you, young lady, because everybody's got a life, right? And I'm sure it sucked for you like it does everybody else. But damn, man, I mean, why don't they look at who would be the better parent? If somebody fights it and says I would like them, you should look.
Well, here's the interesting bit about that. I actually, there were 3 sets of lawyers within the custody cases that my parents went through. There was my father's lawyer, there was my mother's lawyer, and then there was representation for both me and my brother. And we would meet with that lawyer weekly and have discussions with her and find out and she would find out like how we were doing and what was going on. So both of my parents paid for a lawyer for me and my brother. But the thing is, we were so young, 6 and 4 at the time, that you can't exactly attribute good common sense to such young kids. Because if you had asked me when I was like 6 or whatever, I would have been like, yes, I want to live with my mother because she lets me watch TV and eat mac and cheese all day, every day, and I don't ever have to do homework, and I don't ever have to practice my violin, and I don't ever have to do any of this. But when I went over to my father's house, I would get like the very nutritious food and the vegetables, and I would hate it. And then he would make me practice my violin for an inordinate amount of time. It was crazy. But, since then, I've gotten a lot better. I can play 4 instruments now. I have like a good diet established. I have a good sense of, writing.
What instruments do you play? If you don't mind, what instruments do you play?
So I have a lot of vocal training, but I can also play the guitar, self-taught actually, piano and violin. And then I do want to learn how to play the ukulele and the cello, but I don't have either of those at the moment.
Violin, that's best. I've got a guitar or 2 laying around. I've been playing guitar for a while. I play the drums, the guitar, play the piano a wee bit. If it makes sound, I can probably play a trumpet, a little bit of saxophone. But the thing of it is I found that it's good that you're doing that. Don't ever give it up. Practice your beloved instrument. Whatever is your 2 favorites, try to find 15 minutes a day where you can practice those every day and never let that, because when you use those neural pathways that help you connect the idea of melody and harmony with actual muscular function, I mean, you're talking about a cocktail that is just wonderful for your brain.
Oh yeah, definitely. My grandmother likes to say that music, it actually makes you more intelligent in terms of what you can and can't do in other aspects of academia. She's not basing this on any studies, but she's like, I know it because all 5 of my grandchildren are highly intelligent and they all play the violin.
Violin, you said that. That's what I just said. I think makes a sound, but that's one I can't play the violin. That's one that I haven't taken time to get the bow action down with the strings. Oh,
it's extremely difficult at first. But they started us all off very early. I was 2 when I started playing.
Damn, that's awesome. You got some good folks to help you out that way. A lot of the liberal arts are overlooked a lot. And the cool thing is do you mind telling us what you want to do in school so I don't just act like I know, like we may have talked about it before and just blurt it out? So yeah. What are you doing and what are you taking?
So right now I am in a class called Data Structures, which is heavily based on C++, if you are familiar with coding languages. So it's very similar to Java. and it's basically the next step in my computer science degree that I'm trying to get. But at the same time, I'm also taking social psychology, which is like, it's social psychology. It's kind of self-explanatory, but it's also the next step in my psychology degree because I want to double major in both of those fields. And I think that it would be very useful just in general. I mean, because you're getting the computation down, but you're also getting like the human mind down, and I am interested in both of those fields, which is not very common. You don't see a lot of computer science psychology majors out there. It's not a very typical double major.
No, but it's a good mix. When you told me that, I was like, that's pretty good, because you will. I mean, you understand social psychology. You're going to have to take a lot of music classes, a lot of art classes, a lot of poetry. I mean, you name it. It's liberal arts. So you will be on what I like to call, and excuse me, anybody that had a STEM, pardon the pun, a STEM jammed up, where, but it's the cool side of the college. It's where everybody's sitting around with guitars in the grass, and there's homework is to learn some movement on the piano. Anyway, but you'll have a good dose of that too, and man, goodness, that is so important. It's overlooked. We should have both, but. Mm-hmm.
It's a good idea to have a healthy degree of both, like your sciences and a healthy understanding of your sciences. But
this matriarchy we live in has made it so hard for young men. You'll see that there'll be hardly any young men when you get 2 years in, if you stay on the psychology end of it, you won't see them. Once you get to child psychology, you start looking at, you get to psych, 411, whatever. There's gonna be so few dudes there.
You're not wrong. I already experience it.
Yeah, I mean, the matriarchy's got to be broken by some of these new men. No, I'm just teasing. I just thought that. Would that ruin you, boys? I thought that was funny, man.
No, it actually ties in really, really well with my next question, which is going to be, obviously, you've done videos in the past about the different diversities that happen in college, as in the application process of college. I was wondering if you could go a bit more into that at all.
Funny you should say that. Actually, I spent most of the entire summer helping my brother through the application process because my dad, he was very, very strict about it. He's like, Weeb, I want you to help your brother out with the college application process. He has no idea what he's doing. I don't know what to do. You're the only one that's gone through this. He went through it all by yourself. So make sure that he doesn't have that same thing. And I'm like, but. So one of the first things that I told my brother when we sat down to talk about this college application process, I said, you're going to have a bitch of a time getting into college just in general. But at the same time, you're going to have a bitch of a time getting scholarships and stuff because of the fact you are a straight, white, cis male. And he asked me why. And so I went into my whole spiel about how it's a diversity quota that they have to fill or that they want to fill or that is politically correct to fill, and that it's not PC anymore to just let males into a college. So I told him the specific steps to actually get into college that would make him more attractive. I said, you have to work your ass off. You have to look like a freaking golden child. You have to be unrejectable. So I told him, get on that violin scene, hardcore, man, because he also plays violin, as I said before. So I said, make sure that if you're going for a scholarship, go for a music scholarship, because you're going to have that down pat. At the same time, I know you're interested in finance. Make yourself look as attractive as possible as you can in finance fields in whatever way you can, because I'm not very familiar with finances. I don't know how you make yourself look attractive. I just told him, do what you got to do, and then run with it. And then at the same time I said, volunteer hours, make sure that you look like you're going to be one of those people that helps out, that is a good person. And then we talked about his essay, and I said, you're going to have to get at least like 8 different people to peer review it. 16 is preferable, but 8 will do just fine. And so, yeah, no, I'm one of those people that like is very anal about just making sure I have over-prepared for things instead of under-prepared. So we went through this process. I explained everything to him in detail and why it was the way it was. And I said, dude, you have to be better than everyone else, or you're not worth anything at all.
Is that to do with the different?
No pun, but the word anal, the term anal is overused. So let me ask you a question. Is your room very clean? Do you have things extremely organized? When you open up a drawer in your desk, is everything in its own little spot?
Yes. See.
Okay. All right. Well, that would be more anal. Sometimes people think because they're focused or driven and they use that term, and it's actually oral. When you're orally fixated, you I don't want to show you my desk right now. I'm more of an orally fixated person. You're really sloppy and haphazard. But when you start on something, you can't give up. There's a lot of things that Freud would say were fixated. Anyway, bam, I just wanted you to know that, Megs. You're going to go into this psychology thing. Like, remember this. They're going to throw this at you if you already know. I just want to ask you a question. This is totally off topic. I want to know. And then Common Sense has something. He wanted to just ask something. But so if I get positive or negative reinforcement, that's the question. If I give you an aspirin and it takes away a headache, is that positive or negative reinforcement? And why would it be?
Fuck. Okay. See, I explained this like 2 weeks ago to someone, but I want to say that it would be a negative reinforcement because in giving a person an aspirin, you're taking away the headache from them, which is...
Something told me in my soul that you would answer it correctly, because a lot of people think, well, that's got to be positive because you don't have a headache. No, you got to think of the minus or the plus sign. So go ahead. Very, very good, young lady. Stick with the psychology. It's a very good thing to do with your life, and it's fun. You get to do fun stuff that they don't get to do in the biology lab. Trust me. I
do want a minor in biology, though, too, at the same time.
No, it's good to have something to fall back on.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Common Sense. I'm sorry, man. I knew you'd answer that right. I'm proud of you, young person, because there's not too many young people out there that even give a crap. They just want to do gender studies, and you'll have to in that line of work. You'll have to. I got some books I show off sometimes. I don't even want to pull them out right now.
I actually think I can get out of college without ever having to take a gender studies course at all. The way that I
call it that. It was the one that sticks out in my mind was called Women in Gender Roles in the Ancient West. Not the Old West like America, but Ancient West like Greece and Babylon.
Well, see, I only have to take one credit that would qualify as a PPD, which stands for Power, Privilege, and Diversity. And I've been filling that currently with human cultures.
And you think you can go all the way through a psychology degree without ever taking another class like that? If you can't, more power to you and do it.
I think I can, because the way that the credits are set up, they're set up in a way that is well-rounded, but it's not like super.
Well, you also told me that you're going to a private academy. That is a wonderful blessing for you, and I'm not. Maybe you could still do it in a state university, but I went to a private academy, and you had to take just things you had to take, but you do what you have to do, and that is skip those classes for sake. You find yourself, especially you, because right now in college they don't pump it out there a lot, but I don't know if you've seen that little speech from that girl in Evergreen. She was saying, I've been told to sit down and shut up because I'm white and this and that. They focus more on, man, this ain't got to go like all into this weird realm, but this is the fact. You are the new Negro or whatever on campus because you're a white woman that is intelligent and is probably going to get good grades, and therefore your white privilege is showing, and anyway. Thank goodness you're at a private university. That's all I'm saying.
Well, that actually ties in really well with what I was actually going to ask you, especially from what you were talking about before about doing the essays and things like that. Is it not true? Because obviously I'm not from your country, obviously. Is it true that if depending on race, it affects the actual marks that you get from the paper that you write just on your race to start off with?
Honestly, it depends on the teacher that you have. My father likes to tell me stories of when he was in college, and he's like 54 right now. So this was a long time ago, but when he was in college, he had a teacher. I can't remember what class it was in, but he said that if you were a white male, you would get a C and no higher. That was it. No matter what you did or how you did it, you would get a C, and that was it. And in my opinion, I have not had a class like that yet. But I could very well have it. It's kind of a little too soon to tell. I am a sophomore in college, so I haven't had that much exposure as opposed to everyone else that I've talked to, but I have heard stories like that, and I'm not looking forward to that.
Did you not put statistics into your last video of the universities that were saying that if you were they have lower percentage bars that they have to get into the college overall?
Okay, so this has to do more with not essays in general, but it's called the SAT testing, and there are certain, the way that I think I phrased it was that I think it was Stanford University did a study, and they equated the likeliness of a person getting into college to SAT points, and they said that if you're Asian, it's like equivalent to getting minus, I can't remember the exact statistics, but it was equivalent to getting minus 50 points on the SAT. And if you were, I think, black, it was equivalent to getting 140 plus points on the SAT. Like I said, I don't have these statistics in front of me.
No, that's fine. Just basics. We can always say link the
Is
video
that
in
your
the description.
school also, or is that state mandates? Is that that was your university also?
No, this was a Stanford study just in general of, I think it was all universities. Like I said, I don't have it in front of me.
I have heard this, that if you, like, Asians are the worst off, right? Period.
Yes, Asians are the worst off. And then from the bottom it goes Asians, whites, Latinos, and then
Indians, they have some kind of bias against them also?
Not that I saw within the study. Again, I don't have it in front of me, so I was...
No, that's cool. I hate to beat you up on this, but it's just you're well informed. Let me let these boys ask some more questions. I could just bang on you all night. We do have two other co-hosts here.
Nice turn of phrase there.
Lord, I didn't mean that phrasing. I just realized that.
Britisher, do you have any questions at all?
Well, I'm kind of lost on the American education system. So right now I'm kind of flailing helplessly.
Understandable.
No problem. Do you have any questions for us at all, then, Weebo?
Well, I was going to take this into a social justice aspect, and this will probably open it up for the Britisher, because I did realize I'm sitting here, you're in the good old boys club there, Miss Jones, you get to go to I don't know. So there are some, I don't want to be a dick, but sometimes I'm a dick and I just don't know it. That's just, all of us do that. I mean,
well, it doesn't hurt that I'm a legacy student for my university.
Yeah, and that's groovy, man. You know, you got lucky. It ain't because you're white. I don't care what they tell you. And that's where I want to go with this. So when we think about all these, you know, shouldn't it be the same for all? It should be a meritocracy. The only way you can have that is if you take out affirmative action. You take out Yvette Fararka, not with a sniper rifle, but you take her out. You take her out. And you make the playing field even in that here's the information at school. You can learn all through. I liked your video where you talk about like you get a prison sentence, man. You showed the school like it was like a prison. You get that. But yes, you do your time, just like a good inmate. You get out and you move through the system. If you don't do that, well, let me ask this, Britisher. I'm going to ask you, and then Miss Jones can pipe in. Isn't it good? Don't we have a good society when 25% of people are going to university? Why do the other 75% need to go? My time was wasted there to a large extent. Could have very easily educated myself without the money and time spent there to end up doing the jobs I did anyway. So what we used to say, Britisher, is the world needs ditch diggers too.
Well, I don't know if it's just a matter of ditch diggers, but yes, I mean, it used to be the case that you would have, in a way, the elite go to university. This needn't only be the societal elite. It could also just mean the intellectual elite. Whereas, of course, now it is becoming ever and ever more democratized, which basically means to just, you know, we see it almost as a kind of virtue to have as many people at university as possible. We have already seen, you know, conversations online between Gad Sad and, you know, other professors and Jordan Peterson and whatever, sort of hint at the fact that quite a percentage of the people by now coming in are not really up to scratch when it comes to fulfilling the intellectual parameters to actually be there. But one somehow has to accommodate them nonetheless. And at the same time, there isn't really just a choice between either you go to university and you become a brain surgeon, or you just remain a ditch digger. I mean, there are other avenues into the middle class that don't involve a degree.
Certainly there are.
Particularly when it comes to completely useless degrees. It just seems to be nothing else but a complete waste of money that most likely burdens you with a considerable amount of debt right from the outset in your life, without there really being a job at the end of it. So yeah, that would kind of be my 2 pence for the moment. And I seem to have successfully killed it. Yes.
No, I was muted. No, you didn't kill it. Carry on there. You wanted to say something. I heard you, Miss Jones. Britisher's just going to roll on till he's done. That's the British way.
Gotcha. Okay, fair enough. I understand. I have a grandmother that's the exact same way.
That's why I love him. I do the same damn thing, probably to a greater extent. But carry on. Carry on.
What I wanted to say was in reference to the idea that, trade schools are a thing. A lot of people kind of discount the idea of going to a trade school for a couple of years and learning a trade because they don't think it's as esteemed as going to college. But at the same time, if you go to college and you get a gender studies degree, it's probably not going to get you as far as, say, you go to a trade school and you get your it wouldn't be a plumbing certification, right? It would just be your plumber's license. I'm not too familiar with the concept of trade school, but
no, you can get a certificate. No, carry on with the idea. So in other words, these things are overlooked, right? Like it's glorified as we need free tuition for college. Well, what about welding school? What about plumber school? What about apprenticeships for electricity? And that guy was so dumb. I can't even think of it.
I mean, I would say this much: if you ever want to run, found a company that does plumbing. It would help if you are a plumber yourself, rather than if you've been to university and got yourself some clever degree in economics.
Business degree, right.
It would certainly help if you had a business degree as well as that plumbing certification, though, too. Like, definitely would help a lot more. But that's just my incessant need to get as many certifications in anything that I can. That's.
But there's going to be folks like yourself. It sounds like you're pretty early in the running to say that you're just going to be a smashing success, but it looks like you're going to do well. And you probably will use the degrees that you get to further your life, and you'll be able to pay off whatever college, all that stuff will work out. There are a lot of cases, though, where we were talking before you even jumped in the pre-chat, Miss Jones, to Common Sense Caracal. I'm just bust his balls now. Just Common Sense Guy and I were about the idea that he's going to go into the counseling and psychology realm too, and where he's at, they actually have a vocational school for that, for someone that isn't going to be necessarily in management, where you will probably end up being, whether you like it or not. So maybe managing 4 or 5 counselors in a school or something to that effect, as opposed to Common Sense Guy he wants to be one of the counselors that's being managed. He just wants to be there and do his thing. And there should be these levels where we're equating success with college. Isn't that what you were also saying, Britisher, that we're equating it, when no, a plumber that wants to have a business in plumbing probably behoove him to be a plumber first, even more than that business degree.
Certainly.
Oh, very much so. Yes. I mean, you basically, it may indeed help you to have some sort of business degree, but if you don't know anything about plumbing, you are going to be up a certain creek without a paddle.
Yeah.
So in that regard, when it comes to certain types of entrepreneurship, you pretty much are better off actually having those that kind of training in the trade. People may build quite considerable construction and building companies, and they start out as builders. Whereas, as I say, if you know nothing about the trades in question and you're entirely theoretically trained, it becomes much harder to do such a thing.
Yeah. I know that exactly from first hand. I have a friend who owns his own construction company, but the way that he owns his own construction company is he started off as a labourer. He actually started off making teas because he wasn't strong enough to actually do the labouring. So he would do bits and pieces, ended up being a labourer, wanted to learn how to do bricks, so he learned how to become a brickie on the job. Then did a bit of an apprenticeship so he could get a certificate for it. He only went to like college 1 day a week. Then he wanted to do a bit of plumbing and electrical, so we did that, went 2 days a week. And within 10 years, he was able to do almost everything bar the steel construction part, as in laying the foundation. He was able to do everything else by himself and was able to set up a business by himself. And
he probably made money
quite a
while
bit
he
of
was
money.
learning. Yeah, he probably made money while he was learning, you know. Hey,
Yeah, of
I
course he
just
did.
noticed that Amanda Wolfchild just joined us. Miss Jones, I wanted you to meet Mrs. Wolfchild. Great person, one of our co-hosts on Police State. She just got children in life and whatnot, so she joined so late. You missed it, Amanda. She brung up, and I played your part. She brung up anthropology and was talking about women being there and doing the gathering while the men were out hunting. And I said it. Maybe they invented the weapons, you know, the spears and whatnot, and the bows and arrows.
It makes the most sense, in all honesty, and we have observable evidence for it in other species that are similar. Not saying it's the same, but still.
What species are similar to
Hey, she wasn't quite done. And you got to give me a little bit of credit for it because I know what your stance is on that. As soon as I heard, I was like, ooh, if Amanda was here, she'd mention that, man. And whether I agree with it or not, it does. I think about it sometimes. It's like, man, I don't know. I wasn't there, so I can't say that's not the case.
Well,
but don't be laughing up your sleeves at her either. I mean, it's just the way it is. You know, if you're gonna laugh out loud.
Yeah, exactly. The similar species I was talking about was actually there's a group of chimpanzees that are living in fairly similar circumstances to what our early ancestors would have been living in, and they're actually noticing changes in their behavior, such as hunting with spears. And it's the females of the species that are doing it because they can't hunt the meat by hand like the males, and the males don't share the meat.
Okay, but that still doesn't correlate to what humans do because humans were the males were the ones using the weapons. You're trying to use a correlation where it's with a female that's making and using the weapons. The correlation.
Well, yeah, what I'm saying is the origins of using weapons probably dates back to our earlier ancestors, and it's possible it went along these same lines.
In actual fact, the correlation that you're trying to say is that the person the species or the sex that was actually hunting made their own weapons. So in our species, the male was actually doing the hunting. So that means that they made their own weapons by your own correlation and evidence that you're providing.
Well, no, if you actually watch the documentary, I'll go find the link again so I can give it out again. But if you watch the documentary, actually, the males see this behavior in the females, and they're being taught this behavior by their mothers who learned it. And eventually, it's the males who begin like they noticed it at the end of the documentary. The males are beginning to spear hunt. What I'm saying is there's a possibility in our very earliest ancestry that we went along these same lines, and it was actually the female of the species that invented the thing, and the male took it over.
And I definitely want to hear what our guest thinks, because that's why, I mean, she's here now. In any of when you were back at that time you were talking about earlier, you know, I mean, there you go. You heard what she said.
It actually kind of does make sense to me in terms of like, just if it were me back in that time, I would have a lot more free time, especially if I was doing the one doing the gathering. I would have the resources. One, I would have a lot more time because, you know, I'm looking for shit. And
we weren't
for shit to make things easier.
We weren't at that level of development yet when we started hunting. We weren't already, you know, thinking in terms of society and this is my husband and he's going to go off and hunt and I'm going to sit here and gather. It was still very individualistic, like similar to what the chimpanzees are going through right now. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying it was like humans as we know them today made the decision, I'm the female, I'm going to go invent weapons and hunt.
Just a slight interjection as we let you girls carry this on. Do you think that possibly you two ladies represent what we would consider alpha females and that maybe you're an anomaly? Or I mean, there you go.
Well, I'm definitely an anomaly.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to argue that.
I would say I am extremely alpha female, but that has more to do with the way that I was raised as opposed to me being female, because I was raised by primarily you know, and primarily being in a male-oriented family.
Your father had a very good positive impact on your life, did he not?
I would say that is a most definite yes.
It shines through in your ability to be feminine. And look, I need to let you girls carry on, because whether it's about the anthropology, because I think it's interesting when men will usually be afraid of you, young lady, as you grow up.
Oh, I was raised by a super sexist single mom, so
it may be difficult for you to find a companion. I'm not saying terrible. You know, you're gonna have a wonderful life. You're gonna find somebody great, but it may at first be kind of hard to find that guy that is, you know, tough enough to be able to understand who you are. That's
dude,
the best.
My best relationship advice for people is don't go out seeking a relationship. Go out and just seek to have your good, happy life. And eventually you'll find somebody who's out there seeking to have their good, happy life. And it'll mesh up that you want to have the same good, happy life. And you'll go do it together.
Ironically, that's kind of the exact same advice that I would give anyone searching for love. Because in my experience, actually, the moment you stop looking is the moment that, like, all the vultures decide to descend upon you. And I say,
right?
Meaning men. That's just the way that I experienced it.
Because you don't seem desperate and seeking, so that means you must have something good, so they want to seek you out.
Exactly.
It's the way it is. When you ain't fishing, you see them all jumping, man. That's the way it is. Yep. But I got you girls can keep kicking it off. This is wonderful. But I just got something in the chat, and as we cruise into this last hour, I was told by Miss Jones she's got about another 50 minutes or so. I appreciate your time too, girl. You're just wonderful for, you know, giving us this. You too, man. In fact, everybody here. It's late in England. It's and y'all know me. I don't want to go too much and just start weeping on camera, because I'm happy that y'all are here. But somebody said that it's fun because we sometimes do, much to the Britisher's chagrin, a little bit of conspiracy stuff on this stream. So if it's not putting you on the hook too much, and from feeling I doubt it is there, Miss Jones, what is like the thing that you think about that would be considered a conspiracy theory the most in your, you know, in your head, whatever, in life that you're willing to share? You dig it?
I wouldn't necessarily call it a conspiracy theory, but there is this idea that I kind of had in my head that essentially the reason that we are as messed up as we are in society today, the reason that, you know, there is an epidemic, I wouldn't say epidemic, but an epidemic essentially of women who are just very anti-patriarchy, or just men in general, or we have like an influx of people who don't want to have that traditional family type sense. I would correlate it to the fact that we have such a significant population on the planet, because there was a study done, and I haven't actually looked it up. I've just heard it word of mouth from another guy that I think is a very trustworthy source, because he's never actually been wrong from what I've heard. But the way that he stated it, there was a study done with rats where they basically overpopulated the rats into an enclosure.
Teal deer, saw that. Awesome.
It's a kind of mouse paradise. I think it was white mice.
Okay.
I could be wrong.
Type of rodent. I've not seen the study. I have been meaning to go and look for it, but to me it makes sense. So the study goes, there were a whole bunch of rodents in an enclosure, and there were a lot of them. And from what I understood, the female mice, they started rejecting any sexual intercourse with the male mice.
It actually started with the males because they couldn't seek out any territory because the territory was already established. It was more a problem of confined space is what Teal deer, like his final conclusion. If you're trying to correlate this with humans, it's the confinement of the space. Like, actually, we don't have much of an overpopulation problem on the planet. We have a problem with organization, and we don't use our space appropriately.
Yeah. But see, it does make sense that, like, the larger the population, the more social issues would probably have, the more dysfunctional society gets, because then we're focused more on fixing those problems than having those children, as opposed to just in general. And it's not a space problem, you're right, it's more of like a resource problem. We're having, an issue with getting water to all these people and food to all these people and sustaining
people
all
are stupid and lazy, and they want other people to do things for them. They
that
want people
too.
to take responsibility for them.
I wouldn't say it's a conspiracy theory per se, but it's a thought that I've had that as the population has increased and the resources have become sparser, the social issues become more potent and everything just kind of goes to shit so that we stop having kids.
I feel similarly, but I don't go with population. I think it's a disconnect from the natural order of the world that makes us do this. As we have to focus less on actual life and survival and things in front of us, we focus more on things of entertainment. We have the ability to like we've evolved our minds rather than our bodies like other animals. So it makes sense that if we seclude ourselves off into our minds and forget about life, then, we're going to suffer for it.
Yeah, and this goes back to, I was looking more and more in, because, Britt, I was talking about conflict theory the other day, and, that's Marxism. I kind of figured that the Common Sense guy was onto it because he started bringing up cultural Marxism. But this idea that societies, if they're given a chance to just have a beautiful time and everybody's fine and everything's great, they'll just eat each other.
Yeah.
Well, the reason why they do that is not because that they actually want to eat each other. It's because the human body and the human mind wants to create strife. It needs something to fight against. It needs something to force itself to come together. Because otherwise, if we live in a utopia, then everybody gets too soft and just doesn't want anything. And we need to find a purpose. And hence why the left are fighting battles that were already won about 2 to 20 years ago.
In a way, I think that's underestimating humanity.
Not particularly. If you have a look at any sort of form of utopian experiment that's ever happened, including the one with the mice, it always goes that way.
That's mice. I'm saying, but with people, we have never had a situation.
I mean it in a nice way. We're nothing special. We are still mammals.
To the Garden of Eden, we've never had a situation where it was an honest to goodness utopia. And if we did, what would people do? I don't know. I would believe it would be like Palau, because that's about the closest we have to that. They lay around in grass skirts, go out in their canoes, get their fish. There is an abundance of water, sunshine, food, and leisure time. And they really have a great society. I would like to think that if we had it that way worldwide, that's the way, in other words, we could all drive Mercedes-Benzes and whatnot. Yeah.
No, I don't think
that goes against that goes against what you literally just said. The reason why there's a utopia in Palau is not because that they have all of this scientific stuff that's put in front of them to make things easier for them. It's the fact that they have to go out and work to get their fish.
Okay, the metaphorical
order, like
Mercedes. Okay, the metaphorical Mercedes. It's not the because they got one.
That still doesn't work. That still doesn't work. Even the metaphor for it still doesn't work.
Well,
where's the Mercedes in the metaphor for going out and getting your own fish and then laying around?
It's the canoe, brother.
No, because you need to use that to get your fish. The metaphoric Mercedes that you're talking about.
I need to use a Mercedes to go get my groceries. I mean, I'm just saying it was a bad metaphor maybe, but whatever. I do get what you're saying though. If I include a utopia would be unlimited resources such as mansion, whatever. Because you need people to make it does seem...
No, the reason why the utopia doesn't work on that aspect is on the metaphor that you're using as Palau. It's not because of the metaphoric Mercedes that you're trying to say. It's the fact that they still go out and hunt themselves. They still go out and they fish themselves. They still build their own houses and huts.
Well, that's fine. I still love you, man. No, you're right. You are right, too. I mean, that is the big thing, that they're getting fulfillment in depending solely on the weather, the fish themselves. That is a wonderful thing.
That's what I'm saying. There's a natural order to the world, and survival is part of what life is. If you take that out of it, then
what's the point of living?
Yeah, we turn inwards into our minds, and that's where we get all this mental problems.
That's where we turn leftist.
Make up issues that aren't there.
Exactly.
Yes.
If everything's perfect, then something has to be wrong.
Exactly. Matrix theory.
Well, one of the questions you would have to ask yourself is, if you live in a society in which everyone can get whatever they want, how do you establish a hierarchy?
Yeah, because there's
Well,
always
all
been
you gotta do is
deeper.
go look at the Venus Project. I could try to say what I think, but and don't get me wrong. I think that the whole zeitgeist movement and Venus Project is a little crazy with Jacques and the whole 9 yards. But if you go look at the Venus Project and what Jacques been saying for a long time, yeah, if things worked that way, it'd be great. If they made a yacht and they made enough yachts where it'd be hard for people to just go use them on their holiday, they could go get them and bring them back, and all the cars were interchangeable and nobody had locks because you could just go in it. But eventually, man, you got to say, I can't imagine a Britisher living like that. Any British people or Americans, it's like we don't share that way. And that does seem to be human nature getting in the way of utopia. It is
definitely is.
though.
That's why capitalism works so well,
Yeah.
because we like to have
Well-
our own stuff and then be able to share our stuff by going, I will let you borrow it, but I want it back. With communism, it's a place of, oh, this is mine, I'm going to take it. It's not yours, it's the government's. You don't have any say in what actually happens to it whatsoever.
And that's why communism doesn't work.
We may actually be looking at a situation where a new order, a new sort of society will almost have to emerge. Possibly
I didn't think that you were into conspiracy theories there, Britisher, the New World
Well,
Order.
No, it's simply it's simply the inevitability of what is happening in technology. We all know that there is a AI and robot revolution underway.
Yes, we are creating Skynet. What the fuck, man?
which is in danger of basically putting most of the world's population out of work.
We had
Now,
the Terminator movie. Sorry, I keep interrupting.
You cannot really let, most of the population just either starve to death or live off welfare. So somehow we will have to come up with some sort of model, because at one moment, if you just put everybody out of work, if there is no if there is no work other than weather,
What about the Scandinavian model?
weather presenter and brain surgeon? I mean, certain things will still need to be done by human beings. How can you motivate them to do that if at the same time you just come up with some kind of universal wage for everybody?
Well, that's when they're going to start assigning our positions.
Yeah.
Well, but this is here you have the problem that basically, given that you will still need people to do something, or you at least need some people still to do something.
Man, I was reading a little Huxley today.
Because you have all these robots, you simply have no means by which to actually employ everybody.
Well, whether it's like a brave new world and it's a bunch of humans, which what it comes down to, they can make the alphas and the betas and they can do all that, or it's robots. I mean, one way or the other, Britt, it's going to end up being a brave new world. I'm sorry for busting in there.
But I mean, in that regard, I think that is where we more than likely require a new sort of order. We will have to find, more than likely through the process of experimentation, we will have to find some new balance on how to actually run our societies.
Well, I hope a lot more kids turn out like this.
Otherwise, it will not work, given the robots doing that much of the work.
None of it matters at that point because we're the agents of our own destructions. How the fuck can we make the Terminator movies and then make the Terminator reality? What the fuck is wrong with us?
Yeah, Cameron was saying that too, Amanda. I was watching. He was like, "Didn't y'all see the movies? And y'all are just making this AI." Elon Musk.
Well, there's two reasons. There's two reasons why humanity would want to make robots. One is obviously to make the fact that they're going to help us and stop us from working, and we don't have to do nothing and get our ideal utopia. The second is that we want to create a new form of a war, so we can all of humanity can get together and face a common enemy.
But we all know how that ends. Every time. How does it end? We all fucking die.
EMPs, we're fine. We'll be fine.
Theoretically, we all fucking die.
But you know it'll happen. It makes the most...
Unless it's already happened and I didn't know it happened.
We're in the Matrix already. It's fine.
Died.
Man, you're too young to be thinking that way. It's already happened. I didn't know it happened. Yeah, we're living alternate. I was watching this thing, and this Mandela effect got my attention a couple months ago.
I love that theory.
That is just, that's people that are just can't admit Did they remember something wrong? You know,
No.
simple as
No,
that.
totally
it's
a
actual
fucking-
fact.
Oh,
No.
man.
Don't even get me started on Mandela effects.
It's fact.
That's
That's
where
just
they
an
get
encoding
me.
error that has occurred. It's not like I don't base that on any merit. You just encoded something wrong.
No,
That's right.
the one where they get
It's
me is
recall.
Berenstain
You'll learn a
Bears.
lot about it in
Come on.
psychology, man. It's the difference between memory and recall. Your
Yes.
memories are unreliable.
Exactly.
Very
No,
unreliable
but
because
I
your
get
recall isn't always perfect. So as we go back in time and we piece things together in our mind, things can seem so real. They can make you.
But there's the one example, the Berenstain Bears. It's the fucking Berenstain Bears. Everybody knows it's the Berenstain Bears. It's
You
not the
remembered it
Berens-
wrong, sweetheart. I'm so sorry,
Everybody
Amanda.
remembers it
No,
wrong.
no.
So does everybody.
I don't remember. I remembered it right. Just like if it's the Looney Tunes, like cartoons or tunes like
No, I
tunes.
remember that one.
I've
right.
always knew it was tunes. I mean, it's just you remember some things correct. Don't get me wrong. I look at this stuff, and once in a while, I mean, even the mighty Britisher remembers things incorrectly, and when you see it repeated again, like in a commercial, someone's like, "Huh, bloody hell! I thought that was that's just the way it is." But you got to just accept it. I mean, the Berenstain Bears, whatever. That's always been what it is.
Berenstain Bears.
Especially since a lot of the people who watched Berenstain Bears were kids at the time, so they probably read it wrong or encoded it wrong or some method of something. Like I remember watching. Give me a really bad movie.
I was reading Shakespeare when I was 6, man. I knew what the Berenstain Bears said. It was
I
Berenstain
definitely
Bears.
was not reading Shakespeare at 6, but I remember watching what was it? The first Star Wars movie, the episode 1. I can't remember what it was.
You mean
the
episode
fourth
4?
Star Wars, the
No,
fourth Star
episode
Wars movie.
No, episode 1.
Yes, the fourth Star Wars movie.
Yeah, that's how it works out. It's episode 4.
With Jar Jar Binks, right? Or what? No,
Yeah, with Jar Jar Binks. I remember
Oh.
when I was a kid, I thought that was like the greatest movie ever just because I was a kid or whatever. But as I grew older, I realized that it was complete shit. The dialogue was crappy. That's because I got older. And
I don't like sand. It's gritty. And it gets everywhere.
God damn it. Golden.
And another great one from Anakin. Young Anakin is like, I don't like space. It's cold. It's like, man, that whole movie sucked. But I loved it when it first
came out. Like Anakin.
No,
what's
come on, man.
that
Give that
with
kid
the Mandela effect, Jones?
He was cute.
No, you just don't know no Mandela effect. I'm with you, man. I tell you, probably Britisher. I mean, to me, it's just like you don't recall everything. You remember some things wrong, some things right. And it's human nature, Amanda, to want to believe in your memories. But you know, the number one thing in a court case, like a murder that happened in public, is not eyewitnesses.
Yeah,
That
I
is
know.
actually
Eyewitnesses
the
are
last
bullshit.
thing that
I
they
get
want.
But I love the scientific theories anyway of multiple dimensions all layered on top of each other. It's fucking awesome anyway.
Oh, yeah, those are fun.
So
well, what do you think about it then,
every
special
time
guest?
you make a
You're
decision,
the belle of the ball.
you
Tell
can-
us about it. What do you think? There's a possibility that as I sit here, look, I'm not even going to mock it. You think there's a possibility that as I sit here right now, and I'm just chilling with y'all, that maybe there's there's a doppelganger somewhere that's doing something else in another place and time, and sometimes we converge and change places. I mean, what does that mean? Other alternate universe. What does that mean?
No, it's they're not somewhere else on the. Oh, I'll let you go. Sorry.
Yeah.
You do
I don't
yours.
care who. Just somebody tell me about it.
I'm just massively intrigued with the concept of, dimensions, but like also the whole time theory concept is just incredibly interesting to me. That's probably why I really enjoy DC Comics and watching The Flash, because
And Tim Drake.
Oh, I love the theory that all these alien visitations that people see, it's really us from the future that we really figured out time travel. I love.
Are you talking
that theory.
about Pixar theory, the Pixar movie theory?
No. There's a theory like the gray aliens with the big eyes and everything that everybody always says they see. Well, scientists have said things about how humans will possibly evolve in the future and that we'll have larger eyes because of technology and blah, blah, blah. So people have come up with this theory that all these gray, big-eyed aliens that everybody sees, that's humans from the future, that humans have perfected time travel already.
That does intrigue me, actually. That intrigues me
ourselves.
a lot. And that brings up a good, like an interesting point of which time theory do you think is the most, like, accurate?
Oh, what I think is the most accurate is that we're all in The Sims right now. We are all Sims, so it doesn't fucking matter anyway.
Well, to simplify it, there are two really popular time theories. There's the one that acts as a river and basically everything flows into itself, and then there's the one where it's basically just a giant pool and everything exists and is happening at the same exact time, just on, you know, at different places in that pool or whatever.
Yeah, and there's also the
My
third
theory's the
that
pool.
it travels and it loops in different places. And I know the time theories, but I like the idea that we all live within The Sims, that we are all a simulation anyway.
I like the pool idea.
Now, is it possible for both of these theories to coexist at the same time?
Well, if you believe in the pool theory, yeah, obviously.
But if you believe in the river concept, it's not so much.
No.
No, because everything flows into one, as you quite rightly said. But in a pool theory, everything's happening at the same time. So any theory that you come up with, including the river theory, would go into the pool theory because it's all happening at the same time.
And then there's those middle groundy people that think that time does flow, but there are also places where it loops and stuff. They could possibly also buy into the pool theory, thinking it pools in places and flows on, blah, blah, blah.
Like the theory where there are set times, like where set events in time that have to happen.
Yeah,
Hence deja vus.
Yes, and that there are places in time where time just loops itself, and you know where paradoxes happen and they correct themselves with a loop.
Gotcha.
I love the idea of paradoxes.
I do too.
They work themselves out in the end.
But how would we know if it's a paradox?
Exactly.
I suppose we should go back onto something
yeah, some form of
more substantial.
This always tends to happen when I come on streams. We meander off topic.
Gotcha.
No, it's the last hour anyway. It's time to do that. I mean, we get people talk about stuff in the side chat, and I always like to think of what crazy stuff goes on in people's heads. For me, I don't really want to talk about it in depth, but I sometimes wonder if the world's round. No,
we're not doing that one. Move on. We're not doing that one.
What they do out in Bohemian Grove, and why two people running against each other for president in 1 year were both Skull and Bones members, and all this stuff. You know, but we know how.
I like Bohemian Grove. I like that idea. All the world's elite meet in one place and decide what the future is. I like that. I find that very, very conspiratory.
I've told you before.
Mullet. Praise Mullet. I got Mullet right here tonight with me on my jacket. If you didn't notice the little gold, the gold owl. That's that's that right there on my jacket. No kidding. It is Mullet.
You need your human sacrifice, though, Ogre.
That is a straight up Bohemian Grove, BC mullet.
Yeah, but for it to work, you need your human sacrifice. You should know this.
No, well, it can be an effigy, man. I mean, I ain't into killing babies and whatnot, but if it was like an effigy, if I could go to Bohemian Grove, they invited me, I would go. I mean,
you have to find out.
Why wouldn't he be fine? I mean, I would go because it's like the best food in the world. Really famous people get up and do the lakeside chats, and they've dressed up like druids and stuff and do the, you know, oh, great owl of Bohemia. We beseech you once again this night underneath these happy trees. We have murdered many people this year, and our hearts are heavy. Yes. Anyway, I would go. I would totally go. It started out with a bunch of actors just getting together and having fun. That's what it was.
I've got a question for the whole panel. What does everybody actually think about aliens or alien life? It doesn't matter if you think it's humanoid or not, but alien life in general.
It was people that was antediluvians before the great catastrophe that destroyed the world, and they probably took off in some kind of spaceship and left a blueprint that has been interpreted into many different mythoses, from Sargon of Akkad all the way to Jesus Christ of Nazareth. All kinds of things they've interpreted into, and they're probably going to come back to this earth.
Theory, then?
I think they probably will come back to this earth at one time when they're ready to, when it's in a good state. Not necessarily to take over, possibly to, but probably to just, you know, be back to where they're from.
I think I've seen a thing on YouTube that you've watched, Ogre.
No, that's my own studies and a bunch of different things.
So you believe in the alien god theory then, where you believe that gods that were worshipped by
Amanda,
humans
if you
were
know
actually
of a documentary about that, I mean, I would love to see it.
It's not a documentary, but it is interesting. I'll find it and send it to you. It
rock and
sounds
roll.
similar.
No, but that's my own. What I just said was really my own. But boom, other people got things they think. Britisher, what do you think about otherworldly beings on this planet? I want to hear what he's got to say.
Well, what exactly do you expect me to say? I mean,
Yeah, the British don't know what to do with us.
How many times? When's the last time a UFO landed in your backyard? You talked to him, kind of deal.
Precisely, yes. So I seem to have a lack of rational experience in this field, so it's rather difficult to comment.
I'll tell you, I don't know if it was the government or what, but I lived in New Mexico, and you do see shit all the fucking time. There are lights around the mountains, and they fly all kinds of crazy patterns and then disappear, and all kinds of shit happens out there.
What might that be, Miss Jones? What could that be other than UFOs? What might that be?
That could most likely be some sort of government testing aircraft thing.
And you heard his question. I want to know what you think about that too. So are there like ETs and whatnot, other people that are observing us in some way and trying to interact with us?
I think that it's all pretty valid. I want to say that yes, of course, there's statistically it's possible. It's definitely likely, highly, like 99% possible that there are aliens out there. Whether or not they're just alternate beings, whether or not they're already here, whether or not they're humans from the future, or they were once, they were thought to be gods or whatnot. I think they're all pretty valid, and I would actually have to look more into them. But I think the most interesting of them all would have to be the ones where they thought that early humans thought that the aliens were like god-type peoples. That actually really intrigues me.
Why is it, in your opinion, so likely that there are aliens?
Why is it likely?
Basically, you said it's sort of 99% likely or something like that. I think you said.
Well, it's highly probable that there are other forms of life out there.
Well, they've found other planets that are Earth-like already.
Exactly.
Well, if you basically accept that we have a kind of almost infinite universe, and therefore, of course, you have infinite possibilities. So therefore, one would think it would be highly likely, but that only basically works as long as the chances of life coming about, particularly intelligent life, is not in itself also almost infinite. So if you have a sort of finite chance of there being intelligent life and set that into an infinite universe, then you are correct. But if it is almost infinitesimally small, the chance that you get intelligent life, then it might, in fact, not at all be that likely.
To be fair, though, Richard, the fact that the probability of sustainable life on this planet is absolutely insignificant, incomparable to winning a lottery, for instance. We all know how that is. But we've had life on this planet now, 3 different times? From like just having plants, then they were extinct, and then you had dinosaurs, then they went extinct, and then you had the rise of the mammals, and then we evolved, and so on and so forth. So for it to happen 3 separate times as well, that just proves that the statistics out there may not be very high, but they're very probable.
3 separate times on the
same planet.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that if it's come on 3 times on this planet, as Amanda's already said, there's loads of other planets that are exactly like ours. The probability for life is extremely high.
We don't know that they're exactly like ours. We know that
there is evidence to say that they're almost exactly like ours, and they're in their equivalent of a Goldilocks.
We know they're similar to ours, and one has to be highly skeptical about that, because it's not as if that anybody has ever seen those planets.
Highly skeptical, but I would say numbers, Britt. But I gotta err on that side. I think that if there's something out there, it probably came from this planet.
Here's what I think. I think that the answer doesn't really fucking matter. It's the question that matters, and the fact that we keep questioning and we keep doing things that make it to where we can find the answers someday.
That's a good point. Yeah.
It's very difficult to quantify exactly the
Well,
of like how likely life would be outside of planet Earth, especially when you're
would
dealing
you-
with infinites. Because on one hand, it could be highly possible, but on the other hand, it could be highly unlikely as well because you are dealing with infinite possibilities. It's either one in infinity or it's another number.
I mean, you say, we would find the answer. That shows a kind of bias toward finding an answer that there are aliens. Because
Well, an answer that there are
trying
or
to
there
find the
aren't.
answer that kind of tells us that there are no aliens is almost impossible, isn't it?
Well, no, not if we actually get out into space. Like that's what we're gonna do eventually.
Well,
That's
yes,
our
Like you
final
said, if somebody
frontier.
figured out that thing, Brisher, the infinity code, maybe we'd know. But right now, it's
yes,
like
but I
we don't
mean,
know. We
if
won't
you're
know.
actually having to look at a nigh on infinite universe in order to prove that
But that's
on
not why
no rock is there life, it then becomes pretty difficult.
I don't think that that's why we would do it. Like that would be the question, the driving force to get us out there. That's why I say the answer doesn't really matter. The fact that we never stop questioning does.
You
To be
can't go out
fair,
there anyway. It's
Well, I
gravy
think-
out there. The Earth is flat, and they're just like holes in the firmament that light through.
I think one
That's
of the
crazy.
questions that is perhaps we would have to ask ourselves is perhaps one of the more practical reasons why we would start going out there rather than to try and find aliens would
Another
effectively
planet.
to spread humanity.
Yeah,
But
that's what we're gonna do. We're a fucking
that
virus.
that does raise one question. If you have this perfect planet here, and it is pretty perfect if you think of it, I mean, no matter what we are doing to it, it is actually fairly perfect.
Oh yeah.
Who would want to leave this place and go somewhere else
People
Only
that
if there was a
want the
horrible-
answers.
and live under fairly Spartan conditions, away from the cinemas, the museums, and
Oh,
all the
come
other
on.
things we've built up here?
Well,
There
only
will
if there was a
always be
serious
people like
catastrophe
me.
that took people out. You see, that's what, and I already said, so I need to shut up and let Amanda talk. But I told you what is what I believe. If there's something out there that's close and watching us, it possibly came from this planet.
I can actually tell you that there's been life that's been found on Saturn's moon Titan, and I'll link in the description that it is, and it's vinyl life, so it's not like multicellular, but there is life on other planets already.
There you go. But
And that's
Sorry?
from National Geographic as well.
what I was saying is there will always be people like me. There will always be gypsies. There will always be questioners. There will always be people who would fucking go.
Well, the thing to point out there is, if we look at the people who first went to America, it was the Puritans. It was the people who left here because they felt offended at the idea that they were being told that they couldn't discriminate against the Catholics quite to the level that they wanted to. So it may in fact be the nutcases.
Before all that, we explored just to explore, and we, back in our evolution, spread out all across the earth just because we fucking could. And we did that in America just because our manifest destiny. We're gonna go to the other end. We gotta find out what's there.
But we did it for territory and for profit.
Yes, manifest
That
destiny,
might be
baby.
what like the people in charge wanted. The people doing it, they just wanted to go do something. They loaded their families up into those wagons to
Yes,
go
because
see
they
what was
hoped for a
there.
parcel of land.
And we got to take a lesson from that, from the assimilation factor, because we didn't assimilate with the people along the way, and now they're right now, for the time being, teetering on still United States. Well, if we let all these things, whatever, come in, and it's like, no, we can't, culture appropriations and the fucking this and that, my brain's bleeding by the end of it. No, if you're coming in here to live and be here, you got to be American. Or remember the Indians.
Yeah, if my people were smart, they'd have killed them all off, but then I wouldn't be born
Right.
in the mix.
But you're right, Amanda. I mean, it's not the way it worked out. But if they would have been smart, they would have got together and been like, white men buy all Manhattan for heap big sack beads. We kill them, white man, next Wednesday. Yeah, that's a great idea, Running Bear. It's like,
the moment they landed, they should have been like, "Oh fuck, you're on my land, kill you!" Like there's
God.
a tribe still today that exists.
no, you got Squanto bringing them freaking turkey, man, and having Thanksgiving with them.
That's
see,
not
the thing
exactly
is,
how it went
Native
down.
Americans didn't believe in private land ownership. They thought that everyone belonged to everywhere, basically.
Yeah, I know, and that was their bad idea.
Well,
That's
not
why we
quite.
can't keep that bad idea.
Well,
Like,
not
there's a
quite. I mean, if the wrong person from the wrong tribe was on their land, they might have something to say about it.
yeah, but they believed in
True.
much more fluid terms of like contract and stuff, of agreements and things, where land would belong to someone for a time and it would change hands much more agreeably.
Well, they were
or with
fairly
war
primitive
time.
tribal societies.
Yeah, but if
Yeah.
they were hunting, man, the idea of the king's deer, that goes back to the Indians. I mean, if you were, because what the Britisher says, look, if you just wandered on to, you know, Algonquin territory, the Blackfeet or whatever, whoever it is, they probably aren't just going to kill you. But if you're there with some other braves from another tribe and you're hunting whatever, deer, antelope, buffalo, whatever they're hunting that time of the year, they're not going to be happy with you. I mean, at the very least, they're going to kick your ass.
No, they're probably gonna take a portion. You know,
Definitely,
that would be how
dude.
stuff
Right.
like
That's
that
what I'm
would be
saying. It's a very
settled.
good point, because that's probably what they do. If they caught them, they'd probably rough them up, you know, beat them up a little bit, and then like say, "Here you go. You take 15% of what you just got. We're going to take this meat and jerk it ourselves." But the idea of land, it was just a different concept, because most Native Americans were nomadic. So the idea of I own this land all the time wasn't there. But like the Britisher said, the idea of I own this land right now because I'm here, yes, that always existed.
Like there was a
Yeah.
buffer zone. It's kind of like your bubble of personal comfort and space. Only it was
Exactly,
extended
but
further.
there's an isolated tribe on an island right now that's got the right idea. They kill anybody that comes near, and now nobody's allowed to go near them.
Man, do you know
They
the
don't even
name of
drop
that?
aid to them anymore.
I've seen that.
I can't remember, but I can look that crap up real quick.
Yeah, they like shoot arrows. I mean, they're not going for it. That's so messed up. I watched a thing called Happy People, and there was a lady way up in Siberia with her family. They took off when Stalin was coming into power, or yeah, Stalin, I believe, in World War II. They were isolated for so long, and then these people found them in the Targa, they call it. They found him up there, and when
Tiger.
however you say it, the Targa is how I say it pronounced. I'm just not British. I'm sorry. I'm not going to argue with you over English pronunciation of Russian words right now, British. But whatever it is, the vast wasteland up there that is the Taiga.
Thank you.
When these people landed to, you know, document these folks have been up there who were down to their last freaking axe head too, and like the end of their dishes. They've been up there for 40, 50 years. I can't remember off the top of my head. They brung some kind of just a flu, killed them, killed everybody but one daughter, killed the whole family.
Yeah,
Anyway, that's a happy note. On that happy note too, this is getting close to wrapping up, because I told you what we like to do here, Miss Jones, in the beginning. We have a lot of people here that love to speak, and I want to make sure that everyone gets a chance. In case I don't get a chance, because what we do is we let everyone have their last little say. Could be about anything they want. Could have to do with what we talked about just recently and sometime in the stream. Anything. I mean that could just cover it. Anything you want. But if I don't get a chance in that time, because we don't interrupt each other at that point, and no one will respond. That's just your chance to get on the soapbox and say what you want to say. It's been a pleasure to have you here, young lady. And I really hope that there'll be more people like yourself. And remember a panel, Locke, right? Common Senseguy, Prankster Locke.
That's the one, yes. Prankster
Nathaniel Lockhart. He's just a great young guy. And I just, in my heart, it makes me happy. And that's what I wanted to say, to know that there's young people like you, because you're still very young. I respect you very much, but you're very young. To me, you're a kid. And it's good to know there's a kid that's out there that isn't just, oh, I got to get these shorts, and that's it. You know, I mean, of course you want to get the shorts. Don't get me wrong. Or whatever.
I'm gonna start calling it ogering on when you do this.
Ogre what? Ogre on. I was ogre on.
Yeah.
So there you go. That was my way of trying to be brief and say we're going to wrap it up. Thank you, Amanda.
Somebody's got to point it out when you do it. Now I've got a term.
So
Yeah, roll.
Does it matter who goes next, or?
Oh, no.
That
That was pretty much it. Yeah. So what we'll do is, if we're ready to wrap it up, everybody, because I got to get going, man. Mrs. Ogre's here. End of a 2-week vacation, and I don't want to ogre on, so I'll tell you about it in the wrap up. But what we'll do is, Miss Jones, we don't want to put you on the spot and make you go first or last. So we'll just have Amanda, you start us off, and we'll go Common Senseguy, and then Miss Jones, Britisher, and myself. Anything you want to say, too. I think I pointed that out.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to say that all these things are fun to think about, and as long as we all keep thinking about all of them and don't shut off any of the marketplace of ideas, then we'll all be good. It's when you start saying that you can't think about or talk about something that bad shit starts to happen. That's it. Go check out my channel. At some point, I'll post another video. There you go. There's a shill.
Well, I just wanted to add
That
a little
was
bit
fast.
extra. Yeah, it was very, very fast. I just wanted to add on to what Amanda was saying, basically. And it stems into what's going on in the world at the moment, whether you're right, left, centre, up, down, whatever. The marketplace of ideas is what Amanda was saying before, is the only place where we can question what other people are thinking and saying. Whether it's right or wrong to say what they're being said, it doesn't matter. If it's out in the open, you can critique the idea, you can bring it into the light, as some people have mentioned before, and then you can talk about the idea. Whether it's right or wrong, you can change people's opinions. If you purposely and continuously push people into a corner, that corner will start to overswell. And because they're in a corner, as that has happened in the left, they will start to form echo chambers and believe that they can't talk to other people about their ideas. They need to talk to themselves. And then those ideas get messed up and, as we would say in human terms, they get inbred. In other words, they get worse. So in that aspect, you have to draw people out and actually talk about the ideas.
Exactly.
Yeah, there we go.
Thank you, sir. We'll just continue on.
Yeah, no, I don't mind.
Okay, so I guess it's my turn then.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. I just want to thank you so much for having me on. As I said probably earlier, I think I'm not very familiar with the whole live streaming thing. I'm kind of a novice at this, but the more that I do it, the more comfortable I feel, especially since most of my content, I have like this big ass script that I use where all of my thoughts are compiled, and kind of this on the spot thing is a lot better for me because I'm not as used to it, and I feel like this is a good way for me to get used to it. But I'd also like to thank you guys for the very interesting conversations that we had. I do enjoy talking with, older people because they have a lot more interesting things to say, and I do like learning from them as well. So thank you so much for having me on again.
How young are you, if I could ask?
I'm 19.
Oh, you're not that young. Okay. Your picture looks young, and you keep saying older people. So I'm like, are we talking to another 16-year-old? Is this another 16-year-old?
They're younger people than me?
No, we have a 15-year-old boy. You're talking about Locke, but yeah, he's 15.
Well, that, and there's also
Carry on, though,
Scott.
young lady. And if you can, before I let you off the hook, give us anything that has been on your heart, a new semester starting, I do believe, in school, anything that you want. And if you don't want, just say, well, that's all I had to say, over, and cancel out. You've been away.
Well, as of right now, the world is kind of in a place where we need to figure out what we got to do in terms of just, well, let's say everything, because that's not false. But we need to figure out how to start talking to each other in a way that's not super violent. And I do enjoy the way that people on YouTube talk to people, even if it's just a response video or if it's just a live stream or if it's, just a collaboration. It's important. Even if it's angry and even if it's insulting or whatever, conversation is always important. Communication is the biggest proponent of what I would consider is more peaceful society. And we're kind of lacking in that with the general public. So if we could just persist with this idea of communicating with each other, and not just people that we agree with, people that we don't agree with, that's important. Yeah.
That's very smart for a 19-year-old.
Yeah, perfect. Britisher will take it over and do his thing, I'm sure.
Okay, first off, can you actually hear me clearly? Because I'm not sure how well my line is doing right now.
Yes.
You haven't broke up
You're
yet
good.
tonight. Hopefully you'll be able to do your wrap up and you'll give us all another lesson and expression.
Well, I'm not sure about lessons. I mean, one thing that kind of came to mind from what I've just heard of the last 2 or 3 speakers is, you know, when it comes to our being in a more ideologically driven, sort of dogmatic period, it seems that once in a while we kind of seem to we seem to hit on these times where we sort of get into these cycles of kind of ideological strife. I mean, you could say that we definitely had it in the 70s, you know, with all the student riots, with the second wave feminism. If you go back, you can sort of see in the 50s with McCarthyism and things like that. You also had a kind of ideologically driven panic. And I think if you sort of go through the entire 20th century, you can see that sort of on and off it came and it went again. I guess the question is simply, does it resolve itself fairly peacefully? Or does it basically tie itself in ever greater knots until eventually the resolution of it is violent? And I think this is where we sort of face the crux of it at the moment, that it could just resolve itself, that basically attitudes could start relaxing again and everybody could just breathe a sigh of relief and sort of go on their merry way. But one of the problems is, and this kind of ties into what was just said there about how it is good to talk about these things on YouTube and on social media, the very fact that there are powers that are clearly trying to stop that kind of dialogue from occurring, that is in a way a kind of danger, because one is so driven by ideology, one is so determined to shut the other side up, that one is in a way in danger of closing off the kind of safety valves that could actually allow some sort of communication to occur. And that is, I think, where there is a bit of a danger, that one is so totalitarian in one's approach to try and silence the other side that one is just constantly ratcheting up the tension. The fact that we have seen murmurings on the right does worry me. Not in the same way as it does the people on the far left who just see Nazis everywhere. To my mind, it is the left with their shenanigans who are in a way responsible for these stirrings on the far right. And my worry simply is that the right may continue to rise. And I think it is the right that is truly the danger, not so much the loony left. But I think that the fact that one is trying to close down the avenues of conversation, the fact that one is trying to close down what we would call the skeptics online, who are effectively the rational ones, who are doing nothing else but trying to analyze the situation as it is, that is a worry. One is trying to close down the center ground and any conversation and any resolution that could spring from there.
Well, that's my fear. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, not necessarily that the right is going to like continue to grow or rise. Like, I don't think there's going to become that many more Nazis because of stuff like this. But my fear is that they will force people who are, even like me, fairly centrist, but just a little right-leaning, they'll force us all into that same category with their crazy stuff. We'll all end up having to fight just to fight for free speech. But we end up having to fight alongside the crazies, because they're the ones who are going to really step up and be violent.
Thank you for that. But we won't be drawn into another conversation, Britt. That's beautiful if you carry on.
Okay, but I think in that regard, it doesn't so much matter how the far right coalesces, whether it is actually people who arise from the motivation of being kind of, well, fascists, for want of another word, or whether they basically find allies in people who are just being so harassed by the left that they effectively lend themselves to that cause.
True, it's just sad, is what I was saying.
In that regard, I think the various motivations of people who end up on that side, I mean, they were manifold when you look back in the 1930s. But the danger is there. And I think when it comes to, you know, we look at the far left, we look at the violent left, or the alt left, as some people are now beginning to call it. Yes, they're insane. Yes, they are making the streets unsafe when it comes to demonstrations. But at their heart, they're not actually looking to gas people. Do you understand? So I think that is where we do have to be more worried of the far right. But we have to understand what is, in a way, driving the far right. And I think it was Sargon that kind of pointed out that when you even have sort of left-wing thinkers and heroes of the left like Noam Chomsky coming out and saying that the greatest recruiting agent for the far right at the moment is the behavior of the left, then you kind of realize what for a dynamic we're looking at. Yes. And that then becomes quite worrisome, because how on earth do we undo this whole thing before eventually it kind of acquires critical mass?
True, but I just want to point out Antifa is like incredibly crazy. They're just as bad as the far right, and they say the left gets the bullet too.
Oh, in their behavior on the street, they are as bad. In
their ideology.
This is not the way it's supposed to go.
Goal, I don't think they are.
It really is. But
anyway, I shall leave it there, and I shall hand over to the ogre.
All I'm going to say is, if you have any words to put in on that, that's all I was saying that for. It's not even to reprimand you too. I wish that we had a lot of time here, folks. I just know it's 1 o'clock in the morning in merry old England, and I know this young lady has stuff to do here. She's been very gracious with her time. So
yes,
now I'm the dick as always, Britt. That's why you don't want to do it all the time on your channels. You know, you got to be the dick when you're the host. You're like the head, you know, butthole. But Brett, that was wonderful words. If you could put like a cherry, unless that was it, let me know.
No, that was pretty much it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. And I won't lie to you. I wish that in my heart right now that I had something that was right along those lines. But in honesty, I don't. While we were talking today, it kept going over and over in my mind. As soon as we started to speak of ancient man and woman, you know what I mean, and are there people out there, other things, life, lichens, you know, mold, or even some kind of sentient being, some kind of animal, you know, whatever, something that we recognize as alive out there. How does it influence us here? Could it possibly influence us? Is there a god, gods, ancient ones that came before us somewhere else? Who knows? Why are the pyramids there? Did they land spaceships on them? I don't know. I'm not saying that any of these things are, but human beings are inquisitive. They're aggressive. They're selfish. They're loving and caring. They're emotional. We have these things that separate us from animals. And I know someone is probably thinking, well, there's apes and this and that. Yes, but we know one day we're going to die. We have that up on all of them too. I believe we need to consider the after. There's something else there. We don't need to make it our priority. If we make it our priority, oh, goodness knows, we could fall prey to assuming there's going to be another thing after this thing, therefore we don't enjoy the thing we have. And I can't make it more clear than that convoluted statement. We don't know what we have after, so we should definitely make the best of the life that we have, pour our all and put our everything into whatever it is that we decide to do at that particular moment. But we should also, every one of us, even you, Britisher, you should get this in your programming. See if there's an update on your circuitry. We should all ponder that there may be something beyond, be it an alien, a god, whatever it may be, a lichen, as I said before, on a rock in some distant, far away planet, spinning around a yellow star that may one day produce life itself. Maybe we will get to meet these other things one day. Maybe we won't. So I can't stress it enough. Live in the moment. Be yourself. Enjoy the life that you have. Try to do something that will impact humanity. Don't tell yourself that you can't do that and that you're too insignificant and that your life and your job isn't good enough. And what you mean? No, every human being can impact this world in a wonderful way. And hopefully we can all dream about what may come after. And remember, folks, be good to your friends, be good to your family members, be good to your loved ones. Be quick to say you're sorry. Be even quicker to accept an apology, especially when that thing your friend, your family member, your loved one has done seems to be so huge you'll never be able to forget about it. Because constant viewer, panel, our special guest tonight, at a time you think not, your friends, your family members, your loved ones, your life and your cause will depart from you.